So, my theory, at least I haven't seen anyone else who's mentioned this, I believe that the action of the point is influenced by where it sits on the course of the nerve, specifically where a nerve bifurcates into two.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. It's not what we don't know that gets us into trouble. It's what we think to be true that just ain't so. The older I get, the more I think about this observation from my fellow Missourian, Mark Twain. So many of our blind spots are self-created. It's easy to trade inquiry with all of its discomfort and unsettledness for a sense of complacent certainty. It feels good. It's like getting a gold star from your first grade teacher because you came up with the right answer. And who doesn't like getting a gold star? Being right feels good. We can tell ourselves that we're intelligent, perhaps even virtuous, and a more evolved human being. I know I enjoy the taste of feeling superior. But the thing is, the world is ever malleable. There is nothing in this post-heaven world that does not come along with its opposite. And so, knowledge or understanding, it has a shelf life. I'm constantly tempted to think that there are some universal principles of right and wrong, something unchanging that I can hang my hat on, so I don't need to think or reconsider any of my stories of the world. Worldviews are notoriously difficult to change. It's hard to let go of solutions that, at one time, provided a workable answer. It's uncomfortable to reconsider beliefs or make room for diverging points of view. And then there's that pernicious capacity we all have for confirmation bias, which brings me back to the brilliance of Mr. Twain's observation that it's what we think to be so that just ain't true as being the source of so much suffering. It's unsettling to take any cherished or comforting belief and inquire, is that so? It very quickly leads to the questions of, how do I know that I know? And do I know that I know? Which, as unsettling as it is, can show all too clearly where I've swallowed an idea or accepted someone else's word without much investigation. I do it all the time, and what's more, I take the conclusions that I've made to divide the world into good and bad, and I'm as happy to choose sides and fight as the next guy. In fact, often enough, I'd rather fight than change my mind. Trying to understand people that trigger a disgust response in me, attempting to give some space to see the world of someone who I consider to be narrow-minded, evangelical, biased, racist, or prejudiced, that is asking for Dalai Lama level equanimity and compassion. And I fall way, way short of that. So I'm sticking with Mark Twain's recommendation that there's plenty to think that I know to be true, but it just ain't so. And where's the best place to start? Usually with the things in this world that spark my anger, frustration, or disdain. There is plenty to work on. As much as I like to think of myself as being open-minded, I'm actually not very much so, which is why it took a friend weeks, maybe months of badgering me before I took him up on the recommendation to get some acupuncture for an annoying chronic condition that I'd pretty much surrendered to. It's hard to make room for a new idea when I've got a pretty airtight story of how things already work. And so when a listener of the podcast said she had a teacher who said, there's no such thing as chi, that got my attention. Got my attention in a dismissive, what? How can you be teaching new practitioners about acupuncture and not also be talking about chi? Which then in turn raised the question of, I wonder what this person is attending to if they're not thinking about chi. And that seemed like a good jumping off point for a conversation. We'll get into this conversation with Leah Fehres in just a moment. Stay with us. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AcuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear-Don't-Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Welcome to Shop Talk. In this portion of the podcast, we are bringing you roughly 15 minutes of practical, clinical methods, perspectives, and advice that has its work boots on. This section is all about practical material that you can begin to investigate the next time that you walk into clinic. Additionally, visit the show notes page for supporting materials from this week's guest on Shop Talk. All right, roll up your sleeves. Let's get to work.
Hey guys, it's Chloe from Radical Roots, and this may not be the shop talk you're expecting, but I'm sure hoping it's the shop talk that you need. So I've had an issue with this field for quite a while, and I think I'm going to take some time to talk about it with you all today. Now, it's not because I don't love each and every one of you, because I do, genuinely. I think that if you are called to this medicine, you are an incredible heart-centered healer who is wise enough to understand that this is the greatest medical system in the whole world, and you are brave enough to fight against many of the societal norms. But the thing is that I think that we're all doing a disservice to our medicine. I think that we need to do better. So today I want to talk to you about the power that lies within our medicine and how we can work together to expand its reach. So first I want you to think about why you got into Chinese medicine. So I always like to say nobody gets into Chinese medicine in order to make money, right? We were all called to this profession because we wanted to help people in a radical and beautiful way. And that's what we do. We provide our patients with a proactive medicine that allows them to build health in their daily lives. But often we get out of school and we realize that in order to actually practice this medicine, we also need to successfully run a business. And that comes as quite a shock because, let's be honest, the schools don't exactly prepare us for running a business. And the skill sets that we're taught are not really overlapping. So for many of us, it's incredibly daunting. But to me, what's most important for us all to realize is that there is truly no competition in our field. Each of us has our own unique gifts to share, and there is absolutely no shortage of need in our society. See, the decimation of our community's health is just abhorrent, and it is essential that we do everything that we can in order to turn the tide. And I believe that by working together, we can exponentially grow our impact and build health in our communities. So let's talk about how we can expand our reach. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about the population that calls to you. Who is it that truly speaks to your soul? What modality of Chinese medicine draws you in and you can't get enough of? So for me, it's always been herbs. You know, I've been obsessed with the idea of using Chinese herbs for public health intervention since my very first day of school. For you, it might be children's health or pain management or veterans. You know, there's really no limit to the possibilities. I mean, look at Merlin Young and Jenny Craig of Moxa Africa. I truly believe that their organization is the greatest tribute to what we can do, what the possibility of Chinese medicine is. They are literally using moxibustion to treat drug-resistant tuberculosis in Africa and North Korea. I mean, does it get any cooler than that? It's truly one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever heard. And they had no idea what they were getting into when they started, and yet they have persevered through hell and high water. I mean, it's really amazing. Not only have they brought our medicine to places that have never seen it, but they have helped people who are desperately in need of affordable medicine that can be used within their homes. Not only that, they have also given us research that we can use as a field in order to support our further efforts to expand our medicine. So I want you to identify your specialty. I want you to think about how you can do a better job of educating and empowering that population. We're never going to reach our full potential as a field if we are not educating people on what we can actually do. You know, it doesn't even matter how affordable or accessible our treatments are if people have no idea how capable our medicine is. So social media is one tool, and trust me, I hate it too. I really do. It's so uncomfortable for me. But it's also an incredibly powerful tool if we use it correctly. And there are people out there who are absolutely desperate for the knowledge that we have as practitioners. So social media is one option. Blogs can be really wonderful also. Articles for local papers, podcasts, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Start there. Get together with a couple of practitioners in your area or find practitioners in your specialty in other states and work together to build an alliance and work on educational content together. But that's the key, right? It's that every little bit helps. And together we can do so much more than we can do as individual practitioners. See, the Western medical system is a model that responds to disease. But our medicine is different. It allows us to help people learn to build health, and that's exactly what our society is craving. People are desperate for true health care, for someone to sit with them and to hold space for them on their health journey. And that's exactly what we provide. As Chinese medicine practitioners, it is our obligation to do everything we can to expand the reach of this magical medicine. I truly believe that we have the potential to shift the paradigm around health from reactive to proactive, from band-aids to root causes. I believe that our field has the potential to make dramatic shifts in our society, but we can't do it alone. And we can't do it if we are all focused on our own individual practices, or if we're on acupuncturists on Facebook bickering over terminology. We need to see the greater picture, which is expanding health in our communities. So I'm asking you, I am begging you to join me on this marketing campaign for our field. I know we're all tired. I know we're all tapped out. These past few years have hit us all so hard as small business owners and as healers. But as practitioners who have forged our way through the challenges and the hell that is Chinese medicine school, I know that you have the fortitude to give more, and that is what I'm asking of you. One of my very favorite quotes is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So let's work together to teach people how to use the wisdom of Chinese medicine to build health in their day-to-day lives. Let's work together to see how fucking far we can expand health in our society. Let's educate people on the many things that we can treat so that they can understand that they have genuine options for their health care. And let's expand our minds to come up with even more ways that we can use our medicine beyond the typical clinical model. Remember that there are no bounds to what our medicine can do. We are simply constrained by the limitations of our own imaginations. So join me on this journey to see just how far we can expand the reach of our medicine. Chinese medicine is a medicine of a people, a medicine of incredible strength, beauty, and wisdom. I can speak for myself, and I know I can speak for you all when I say that it is one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to practice this medicine. And it is time that we work together to help more people. And there's never been a time where this has been more essential. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time. I am so passionate about getting our medicine out to more people. I love playing with business plans. If you ever want to nerd out or need a hand with figuring out how to make a business plan work, or a pep talk, or anything, please sign up for a chat with me on radicalrootsherbs.com at the contact us area. I would say email me, but I'm a disaster with my email. But either way, I'm here for you. I love you. I'm super grateful for you. And I really hope that we can work together as a field to expand our reach. Thank you.
Leah Fehres, welcome to Geological.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I am so happy to talk to you. I heard about you because somebody actually wrote in to the podcast about some other issues and then commenting on some things that they've been learning. They said, we've got this teacher who's been teaching us about needling and stuff, but she was saying, actually, well, she doesn't really matter. And I thought, wow, that's unusual. I think I want to talk to this person.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing to hear, I suppose, when the cornerstone of traditional Chinese medicine and also the practice of acupuncture is qi, really, and yin and yang and all of the vital substances. So yeah, I can imagine hearing that there's someone out there that doesn't really abide by that and follow that. To do acupuncture might be an interesting thing to discuss.
Exactly. So I'm thrilled to have you here. You know, the thing that I love about our profession is we've got this basic set of principles. And there's so many different ways to do this and to work with it. And so, of course, when I first heard, oh, this teacher of mine said, chi is no big deal, like you can ignore it. My first thought was, well, that's a little bit sacrilegious now, isn't it? Like, how does that work? And then, so I remember watching a TV show with my wife. Long story short, it's a Jewish producer and his wife dies, and they're having what they call Shiva. When Jewish people die, they have this it's not a ceremony, but just like a way of transitioning through death. And you're supposed to, during Shiva, cover all the mirrors. So in the show, this guy does not have his mirrors covered. And the rabbi goes, just what kind of Jew are you? And the producer says, I'm the atheist kind. So, I kind of thought of that. It's like, okay, we usually talk about chi. It's a real cornerstone. And yet within our profession, there's room for so much. And so I'd love to hear a bit about your journey learning this. I'm sure you got all the usual fundamentals. I'd love to know a little bit about how you came to the perspective that you have.
Sure. So I think it's important to mention that I have ADHD, which I was diagnosed with only last year. So throughout my whole degree and entire life, I never realized that the characteristics of myself to abandon some things when I get on a roll and then I just lose interest in things. It allowed me to dip my fingers into a lot of different pies, but also the opposite end of the abandoning things is the hyperfocus. So once I would get my attention onto something, it then becomes obsessive and I have to know the answer to everything. So during my studies, what got me into acupuncture was the mysticism. My dad raised both my brother and I doing karate and talking about life after death and all these interesting things. So I was just geared to be thinking that way. So when acupuncture came along, and I'd also studied shamanism and all these different things. So when that came along, it just felt like what I needed to be doing. And I was so interested in the concept of energy moving through the channels and all of these things. And to me, it was just a challenge to figure out exactly how all of that happened. And that began the journey. So I think it was in my second year of studying where things just started to not add up anymore about the diagnostic methods and also the theory. There was a lot of conflicting information. And on one side, that's a real beauty about the medicine is that you can approach it from different angles. But then on another side of it, especially for someone for myself who thinks like the way I do, I was like, well, it can't be that and that at the same time. It can only be one thing. So it started getting me thinking about everything. And then a couple of lecturers here and there had suggested at the theory that we use for diagnosis didn't actually have an influence on your points. One of them actually said, you do your theory and then your point selection. And then if your theory doesn't match the point selection, then just change the theory. And then I started going, why are you doing it in the beginning? So it was in my fourth year during clinic when I had finally figured out, I thought I've got the textbook diagnosis. I've got the points. I've got it. And I went to my lecturer and I showed her and she said, no, it's actually this. It's liver yang rising, whatever it was. And mine was another version of heat. But then the points were the same. So I thought, why have I spent all of this time doing this when I end up using the same points and have essentially the same result? So then throughout, after I graduated and got into practice and treating a lot of people, I just started to see that I would get the same results no matter what diagnosis I use, TCM diagnosis. So then I started focusing my attention on anatomy and physiology. I thought, where are these channels? I have to know where they are. So after lots of obsessive study about anatomy, it started to click in the resemblance and the similarities of the peripheral nerves to the actual channels. And then I thought, hang on a second, what if a couple of thousand years ago, before anatomy was fully understood, and we know that the ancient Chinese didn't put a lot of weight into the actual physical anatomy. There was very little dissection done because it was not respectful to your elders to actually do that to the body. That was what the Europeans did. So a lot of their understanding of the body, from what I know anyway, was done through experience of pressing and questioning and everything like that. So they gained a concept of the internal world of the body, but only from the external. So they had an understanding of the nervous system, but from a different perspective. And if you look at the colon channel and the lung channel, they're basically running along the radial nerve. The pericardium is the median nerve. Sanjiao is the musculocutaneous. Small intestine and heart is the ulnar nerve. Sorry, this is a very long answer getting there. So I started thinking, okay, so what if acupuncture is stimulating the nervous system? And you read a lot of research, and it's accepted that that's a physiological explanation as to how acupuncture is working. So I started basing my treatments on anatomy and physiology and using acupuncture points not because of their traditional uses and how they work with diagnosis, but rather what they are physiologically known to do based on their anatomical expression on the body, if that makes sense. So, for example, I'll use stomach 36 in most cases. And like, no matter what it is, you could use stomach 36. And we know that if any acupuncturist had a choice of only a few points to use, stomach 36 would probably be in there. If you look at the anatomy and physiology, and you have to dig and look around to start making these connections, but stomach 36 is where the common perineal nerve branches out to become the superficial and deep perineal nerve. That is a branch of the sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve has an indirect connection to the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, when you stimulate it, exerts parasympathetic control over the body, reduces inflammation, corrects gastric motility, and does basically all the things that are listed in the actions of stomach 36. So that's kind of my perspective of how I treat people, as opposed to being based on channels and qi.
I hadn't thought about how the nervous structure going from stomach 36 up to the sciatic nerve connect to the vagus nerve. Oh, now you've really got a handle on a major aspect of our neurology there. All from stomach 36. Yeah, I see it. I can see how that would function. So, are you familiar with Pony Chang?
No.
Oh, okay. Pony Chang is a Canadian. He's actually been on the podcast before. And he is a neurology geek, kind of like you. And he's actually been doing a bunch of dissections and like looking at points and where they're located in relation to specific nerve branches or bundles. And it just maps incredibly well.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're not alone in this.
Yeah, I have found a few practitioners out there that they incorporate the TCM theory, but they base it very much on the physical structure of the body.
And I think there's plenty of people that do base it on the physical structure. My suspicion is a lot of people who work by palpation, they put their hands on people. They're really looking to see what's going on with the physiology here and how can I affect what I'm finding under my hands with needles. And, of course, we've got our theory to lean on. I chuckle when I hear you say, well, there's this theory and there's that theory, and they all use the same points. Like, choose the theory that makes you happy. Well, what if theory itself isn't helpful? And here you go looking at the nervous structure like that. It's, for me, I love that there's all these different overlays and filters, lenses, not filters, lenses that we can look through. Different lenses will bring different things into focus. So as you've been using this lens of the neurological system, are you finding any other physiological structures or systems that seem to play in as well besides the neurology?
Well, we have multiple systems in the human body, as you know, and acupuncturists would know, having done anatomy and physiology in their course. So yes, they're all important, and they are all working in the results of acupuncture. But essentially, it all comes back to the nervous system because that's what's powering it. You can have a transplant of a lot of different organs in your body, but if you lose your brain, things tend to not work very well. So, I mean, that the heart pumps the blood around the body in the cardiovascular system, but that's being innervated by the nervous system. Same as the digestive system. They're all come back to, and they're all powered by the nervous system. So my perspective on the channels, if there's a physiological or a physical version of it, is that they're a manifestation of all of the body systems working as one that present as a channel. But to answer your question with like specific systems, even though it's not really a system in itself, although it should be, is the fascia system, which is the connective tissue onesie that we're all in. The people that research it, say that it communicates in a similar way that the nervous system does, but through mechanical tension instead of electrical impulses. So when we stick the needle in and we turn it and we get the needle grasp sensation, what the practitioner experiences as chi is actually the fascia and the nervous tissue and everything else in there winding around the needle on the microscopic barbs of the needle. And then that tension pulls on the fascia system, activates the C fiber nerves, which gives us the dull sensation, and then communicates that to the central nervous system. So they're all playing a part individually, but they're all like you can't separate any system of the body. You can only separate a system of the body to talk about what it does on its own.
I like that. You can only separate a system from the body to talk about like what it does. It's so true. We are one integrated whole of stuff. And yeah, you can slice it in, no pun intended, different ways. See a function here, connection there. Now, my understanding of the fascia, I'm no expert, but listening to people who are, there's evidently a piezoelectric aspect to it as well. And when you put a needle in and stimulate it, you're not only winding those fascial threads, pulling on the system in a sense, but there's a little spark in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So essentially, acupuncture is a treatment of the nervous system, which in turn, because it's connected to everything else, affects the whole body.
That's right. Because the needle is very small, very thin, which that's another point, just to take a tangent off for a moment, when people say, well, acupuncture, it's been practiced for thousands of years, it's an ancient medicine. It has nothing to do with what they used to do because they didn't have disposable surgical steel needles back then. Been in circulation for 50 years.
Yeah, well, they're little tiny needles. But evidently, there was like 9 needles of, antiquity or something. And some of them look more like knives or scalpels. And
the thinnest one that you can see on the 9 needle set looks like a knitting needle. And from what I've read, acupuncture was not something that people actually wanted to get done back then. And it was bloodletting. That was the origin of acupuncture. And the vessels were the blood vessels which she felt under the fingers. The concept of qi came about because they saw water in the irrigation fields and they watched water become stagnant. And because the ancient Chinese thought, well, if the external world is the internal world as well, so the stagnation and pain we feel in our body and the blood vessels are akin to the water in the rice fields. So if we get the flow going, then health will ensue and will come after that.
And I'm with you on this, by the way. We're talking about, it's been around thousands of years. Like, well, not in the way that we practice it. and not with the technology that we have. So acupuncture in the Ming Dynasty, probably a very, very different experience.
Yeah. And we can read all we want and look at history to get understanding, but we cannot possibly put ourselves into the place of that culture of people thousands of years ago. Like, we can imagine it, but we're still imagining it from our own perspective.
Yes. I was having a conversation with a friend just the other day. He lives in Taiwan. He's been there a long time. And we talk about Chinese medicine a lot. He's not officially a Chinese medicine practitioner, but he's studied the hell out of it over the years. He's very, I'd say he has very adept level of understanding of Chinese medicine. And one of the things that we're having this similar conversation, he was saying, yeah, nothing like a book and some ideas in another language, a language we can't even read, in another culture that's completely foreign to ours and separated by a few thousand years. We have not much of an idea, but it's a great screen for our projections.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that. And then the other thing that occurs to me, on the other side of that, there are ideas, there are methods, there's I'm going to say a core set of principles that has come down through time and passed down through time pretty well. How people think about it now, how people thought about it then, hard to say. I'm not a sinologist and I'm certainly not a historian, but I suspect you might be able to have a conversation with someone from a few hundred years ago about things like the 5 phases and the 6 qi and stuff like that. I suppose you could have a conversation. Now, how you would actually use that to help people, I don't know. We can look in old books and see like herbs that used or treatments, and they kind of make sense to us. So there's that piece of it as well. There is a piece that comes through, but it also seems to me, and it sounds like you've really stepped into this, there's a piece in our modern day, like in our each individual life, where the dang stuff has to come alive in us in some way, that we can feel like, I got a handle on this. I can use this to help people. And it sounds like you did that through your own peculiarities in the way that your attention works. You found some ways of looking at how this works, in particular with the nervous system. And you've been able to take that and use that to good effect.
Thanks. Yeah, it comes out of my obsession to understand everything, and even to the point where I send myself crazy doing it sometimes.
Well, I don't think you're alone there. I think we're all looking to understand. There's this great question, right? Our patients ask us all the time, how does acupuncture work? We hear it all the time. It's a terrible question because for a lot of us, it's not so easy to explain without sounding a little kooky. So if you were explaining to a patient, and I suspect you have, how does acupuncture work? What do you tell them?
I'd say that it's stimulating the nervous system. And the way it does that is, and this kind of answers your question that we got sidetracked on before because of my tangent, when you said it's essentially stimulating the nervous system. It does this because the equipment that we use, the acupuncture needle, the modern one, is small enough to bypass the first response of the body's immune system, which is the skin. I don't give them all this, obviously, it's an elaborated version. So in the skin, we have receptors that, like a range of receptors that do a lot of things that allow us to interact with our environment. An anatomist named Gil Headley, I was watching one of his videos recently, and he quoted someone else that said, the skin is the surface of the brain, which I thought was a really beautiful statement because it's how the brain interacts with the world. Isn't that cool?
We're going to come back a second. I just want to say something real quick because I had another guest on the show who suggested that the skin is kind of that Taiyang level because it's the very outside. And the Taiyang is actually associated with sensing because the skin is all about sensing. Yeah, I love it. We talk Again, in Chinese medicine, skin an extension of the lung. I can see that too. There's ways that it breathes, but the skin as an extension of the brain. Sometimes I hear something and it just rings true. I can't give you all the reasons why it would be true, but it's like you hear it and you go, oh yeah, that's right. That's it.
Yeah, it stopped me in my tracks when I heard it as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Gil Headley.
He's, I saw a video of his from decades ago, of him, not me. And he's talking about the fascia. He calls it the fuzz, and how the more sedentary you are, the more the fuzz starts to solidify. And that's the reason why we get tight as we get older. Yeah, so highly recommend checking him out. So on the surface of the skin, the receptors that send the sharp, fast signals to the nervous system, the A delta fibers, are the ones that let you know that something's wrong and to, remove yourself from the threat. So the acupuncture needle, because it's not hypodermic, it separates the tissues rather than cutting through it. On most of the time, unless you get that sharp sensation, which is inevitable, but it only happens a small percentage of the time, you get past that and you're essentially bypassing the defenses of the body. And then once the needle goes past the skin and then into the underlying tissues, you're now into the inner environment of the body where the nervous system speaks differently. It's not worried about external attacks anymore, because all going well, there shouldn't be anything to worry about inside the body unless, there's an infection or something like that. So for there to be something in the body, the acupuncture needle, which is actually sterile and doesn't cause any, aside from the micro trauma of the needle going through the tissue, it's not actually a threat. So then stimulating the nerves underneath, they don't respond to pain in the same way. It's a different sensation. It's a sensation that is signaled by the C fibers, which sends dull, diffuse pain, and that's how the body talks to itself on the inside. So we're actually able to communicate with the body inside how it talks with itself. Does that make sense?
I'm with you, and I'm completely fascinated as well. I want to know a little more about how the body communicates with itself on the inside, and how what we're doing with a needle rides along on that signal, so to speak.
Most, all manual therapies do affect those nerves anyway, but because you don't have the barrier of the skin in between, I believe that's why acupuncture is so powerful, is because you're literally inside the body. So as far as the body communicating with itself, it has, as we're well aware, that the nervous system and everything that goes on in the body is so insanely profound that, like we said before, we have to break everything down into minute pieces just to understand the building blocks of it. It's smarter than we are, which is why we've spent hundreds and thousands of years trying to figure out how it works, and we still haven't got it yet. So it's incredibly complex. It's profound. It has its own intelligence, and modern acupuncture anyway. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a practitioner trying to promote the benefits of acupuncture, but there's something about acupuncture. It does things that no other treatment can do sometimes.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.com. www.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code QIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, why get out of bed and go to work doing this if we don't see some kind of effects in being useful? Like, go work at a gas station or coffee shop or something, do something productive. Of course, we're seeing some kind of results. I agree, it's weirdly profound what can happen. And this idea, it's like we've snuck this needle through the defenses. We're now inside the body. Very intimate. You know, acupuncture is very intimate that way, isn't it? Just having this conversation in this moment. As we're talking about this, one of the things that's been coming up for me lately, I mean, my ideas about this are changing all the time. And lucky for me, I get to talk to lots of interesting people. So my mind is constantly looking from new angles. I feel so lucky. One of the things that's really had my attention is this idea of tensegrity. But the thing that's interesting about tensegrity, there's a kind of tension that our bodies need to have to function properly, for things to be in place and held in place, and for us to be able to like stand up against gravity, for that matter. And it seems to me, in the way that we're discussing it right now with an acupuncture into the connective tissue, we're gently manipulating the tensegrity in a particular area. And I appreciate how your mind works. I just want you to know, and maybe because if I was younger, I would have probably been diagnosed with things like ADD or ADHD. I don't know. But I've managed to escape that. So. They didn't put me on drugs or anything. See, I've already lost my thought here. No, it's coming back. So, again, we've got a needle. It's in the inner environment. I want to play devil's advocate. Like, okay, so what? Big deal. Like, why does it have a therapeutic effect? I get it that it's in the body. I get it that the body is interacting with it. How is that beneficial and not a threat? I get it that it's in the body, so it's probably not a threat because the body is kind of seeing it as self. But still, even if it sees it as self, like, so what? Why does it have the kind of profound impact that it has? Or maybe a better question is to say, how does it have that impact?
So, to say that the body doesn't recognize it as a threat is probably not the accurate way to describe it. It's more that the needle is small enough to not cause trauma, whereas the body will still register it as something that is not supposed to be there. And we can see an example of that is if you left the needles in long enough, the body would push them out. It doesn't want it in there because it's not meant to be there, and the body knows that. So the reason why it does what it does, there are multiple mechanisms that I'm aware of. So one of the ways which it's believed that it happens like on a local effect. So if you've got inflammation in an area, you stick a needle into that, and then because it's something new that has happened, the body takes notice of it and then says, we have to mount the defenses and go to that area. And because the needle is sterile, it then focuses its attention on the issue that was there already. Like if you don't have any issues and you put a needle in your arm, you become aware of it, you'll start getting redness, you'll stimulate the tissues and you get the chi effect, which is the C fibers being activated, or you'll get the channel running down the arm, which just means you've gotten close enough to the nerve to stimulate it, down the leg, wherever you feel the channel. Then you'll get redness, which is histamine, causing vasodilation. So the body's very aware of what's going on. What happens also is that when we have something that stimulates the body, we have a broad spectrum of hormones and neurotransmitters to combat the potential negative effects of that. All of these things are triggered in response to most things we do. Dopamine is one of the big ones, which is what is lacking with ADHD. So that's why we lose interest in things, because we get the dopamine and then it will last for a while, particularly when it's like when you feel like you've accomplished or you've reached a point where you think you know enough about it, and that's when the dopamine stops running, and then that's when you lose interest. There's no like endurance with it. So the other ones are endorphins, oxytocin. We know that's a big part with acupuncture, the release of oxytocin. So when someone has an acupuncture treatment, and pretty much always the first time people have it, they get off the table and they go, I feel so different. I feel heavy, but I feel light. They can be ecstatic. They can be wiped out and have the longest sleep they've had. It's because the body's releasing waves of neurotransmitters in response to the acupuncture treatment. And while our experience of that intensity of the chi feeling, if you will, may not be the same as we have subsequent treatments, because the body is used to the experience, it's still releasing these neurotransmitters. So as an example, there's one of the neurotransmitters, dynorphin, is 200 times stronger than morphine. And it's believed that that's what is released when, say, for example, we have a car crash, and, well, you hear that story of people having a car crash and they pull themselves out of the car and they're not in pain, everything's fine. And it's only when they sit down and the ambulance comes, they realize they've got a broken leg and their arm's facing the wrong way. That actually happened to me with personal experience. But that's why in an occurrence where the body perceives that it's in grave danger, it releases these neurotransmitters, so we're in no pain long enough to get ourselves out of that danger. And there's no pharmaceutical that can do that. The other advantage of our neurotransmitters is there's no adverse effects.
Right. The body knows how to manufacture them and then how to take them out of circulation.
Yep. And it's not being delivered with a drug or anything else like that. So there's no come down. So this, all of these different neurotransmitters that we have that are interacting constantly, like that, they're always, hormones are doing everything for us. We're, interacting in the body, telling one thing to secrete this, to do that, all of these cascades. So we are, with acupuncture, we're sticking your needle into those cascades essentially, and interrupting that cascade for beneficial purposes. So questions I get asked sometimes are like, oh, which point do you use to stimulate this hormone or this neurotransmitter, like to regulate the menstrual cycle or something like that? To which I say, it doesn't work like that. There's no endorphin point. You're putting acupuncture points in the body, and the next step is, the thing we need to remember is the results of acupuncture are not actually because of the acupuncture. The acupuncture so much is doing, it's the body's response to the needle. Because the body is self-regulating, and its goal is always homeostasis. So when you start stimulating it with a non-noxious stimulus, then the body will respond to that and correct itself accordingly. So essentially you put the needle in and the body will know what to do. But it does seem to matter where that needle goes. And that's the basis of different points having different actions. But essentially it all comes back to stimulating the one nervous system, which has all of the different effects over the rest of the body.
This was leading me up to this next question that's been floating around in my mind here for the past couple of minutes. If I'm following correctly, what we're looking to do with acupuncture, because acupuncture does this well, is we're stimulating hormones and endorphins and all kinds of other bodily regulating, I'm going to say, substances and or structures, in this case, the nervous system itself, along with its sort of chemical tide that works with it. Okay, fair enough. I get that. So, does it matter where we even put a needle? Or are there particular places, because of where they are? You were talking about stomach 36 earlier. It stimulates one set of nerves. I can't remember what they are, but I know they go up to the sciatic nerve, and that touches up to the vagus nerve. And through stomach 36, we can kind of touch the vagus nerve in a way. And that is a heavy hitter. of regulation in the body. So when you're thinking about doing acupuncture, are you doing a differential diagnosis, or are you, with our theories and that kind of thing? Or are you simply looking at the nervous system and knowing that there are particular places that are going to give me a particular effect, and I'm going to slice and dice and cook that soup based on that? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I took TCM diagnosis out of my treatments a few years ago. I don't do it at all anymore. I don't do pulse or tongue. In the textbook that we learned from at Endeavour College, one of them, like the first statement says, pulse taking is a subjective experience of gaining information about the body. So it's subjective, which means it's going to be different for everyone. So it's not reliable, in my opinion. And the tongue as well. So, but it's even said when you're learning it, like you can use those as a final confirmation for the rest of the information that you've gotten.
Yes, what I'm curious about is what it is that you're attending to. What are you looking at? What are you looking for?
Sure. So I will do musculoskeletal assessments. I'll definitely do all the questioning and everything like that. A lot of the time people will come to me with a diagnosis already. So if they've got tennis elbow, I don't really have to do anything. And if not, if they're coming to me with a set of symptoms, I never diagnose because I'm not a medical doctor and it's not within my scope. I know enough, and most acupuncturists should know enough to go, well, that is probably this. These set of symptoms resemble this condition here. You may want to go to your GP and your general practitioner and get that confirmed. However, I can treat that with acupuncture. So then I would base my point selection on either locally, if it's musculoskeletal, release trigger points, reduce local inflammation. But then if it's a systemic condition, like digestion or menstrual irregularities or anything like that, most of the time I go back to the fact that the body is essentially sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Like that's what's governing it, which is yin and yang, if you will. And we are geared to be in sympathetic for survival. Our brain is always tipped slightly over to the sympathetic side to preserve our life. Most of our thoughts are negative because we're always going, what kind of a threat is this? What kind of a threat is this person or this situation to me?
Yes, the body is a bit pessimistic when you come right down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. So knowing that stress causes inflammation or exacerbates inflammation, and stress is part of sympathetic, and if sympathetic is on for too long, then we don't actually have the capacity to heal properly. So the goal with most of my treatments is to get the body back into parasympathetic as much as possible and to relax the nervous system, because then you sleep better, you'll digest better, everything will work more harmoniously. And that's the only state we can be in when healing is properly accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, 100%. Without that ability to fall into that rest and restore, there is no healing. It's, it's a constant ongoing struggle, and it's constantly going downhill a little bit, for sure. Now, maybe you could walk us through a treatment, just, pull one up out of your mind. One of the big things people are often curious about is well, did I do the right points? What are the right points for this? And of course, granted, there's not a point that's going to this is the fix a menstrual hormones point. At the same time, what I think I'm hearing you say is that there are places that have a big effect on our parasympathetic nervous system. And a big piece of what you want to do is engage that parasympathetic nervous system as much as possible. So how do you go looking for points? And then I guess the next question would be, what kind of stimulation do you use to get the body to pay attention?
So, yes, the location of the points does have a big influence on what happens. So, a kind of standard treatment that I will use is I'll put in stomach 36 and gallbladder 34, which is where the common perineal nerve branches into the superficial and the deep perineal nerve. So they're getting two parts of the same nerve. So as I was explaining before, that stimulates the vagus nerve. I put a lecture on those two, and then one into GB20, and then another one in, so this is called the Simba conchi here in the ear, and I'm not really concerned with which acupuncture point it is, just as long as it's in there, because that is specifically innervated by the vagus nerve.
So it's like the 0 point, basically?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing. You look at all those points on the ear and what they do, like to have a homunculus of a tiny fetus person in your ear, it doesn't make sense that would be the reason why those points are working. Because you start looking at microsystems and you go, well, is the hand the head or is the finger the head? And then it's upside down in some other schools of thought. And you go, so they're all right? And you go, well, there must be something else working underneath that, right?
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
This is the thing you talked about earlier. We've got these different theories. They can be wildly at crossroads with each other. And yet they're both, air quotes here, right. So what else is going on? That's such a great question. What else is going on?
Yeah, well, humans suffer from pareidolia, which is seeing patterns in things. We like stories and we like mysticism.
Pareidolia?
Yeah, pareidolia.
I've never heard that word.
Well, it's like when patterns start showing up. So it's used as a diagnosis in partly of schizophrenia, where people who are having episodes, they see connections in things that aren't really there. But that's like an advanced version of it. We all see that because the brain is looking for patterns to understand sequences throughout the day. So once it starts picking up things that are similar, like an ear looking like an upside down fetus, we start applying a story to it. So just on that note, if you take away all of the theories and all of the names of everything, like muscles don't have names, we made them all up. This thing is existing without a language that we explain it by. So if you take all of that away and you stick a needle in the body, it's still going to do the same thing, no matter what way you're looking at it. And that's the ultimate goal of what I want to understand. Whether you call it chi or whatever you want to call it, it's still a needle stimulating the nervous system.
I'm really caught here for a moment on if we took away the story and if we took away the names of all the parts, now what have you got and how would you interact with that? That is a fascinating challenge. I get it that we're story-making critters. As time goes by more and more, I recognize that There's that really poetic idea, that poetic thought that the world is made of stories. I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, oh, that's so cool. And then time goes on and I realize, oh, shit, that's exactly what's going on here. It is made of stories. We'll kill each other over them, in fact.
Yeah, and we do still.
And of course, we watch our patients come in and they've got their stories of what is going on. And there's all that. But again, I thank you for this. This is kind of like a Zen koan. Like, what if I sat down with a person and just took away the stories and took away the names? Now, how would I work? What would I do? How would I navigate? That's a great question. How do your students do it? How do your students react to this stuff? Because I suspect, they've been learning one thing and you come in, you've got this other point of view.
It can be challenging for some of them. A lot of them, I think. Others are, I think, have been waiting for someone to do it, to speak like this. I think it's important for students to know that when we graduate as acupuncture practitioners, if we don't understand the anatomy and the physiology of the human body, then we can miss potential red flags. If we have someone come in that has a severe headache and their face is red, and all we do is say, oh, it's liver yang rising, put the points in, there you go, see you later. And we check their blood pressure and it's actually 170 over 120 and they're about to have a stroke, then we've missed an opportunity to help someone.
Yes, of course, we have to recognize danger.
So when we start speaking with other practitioners, like, yes, we're going to refer people to other acupuncturists, maybe, but it's unlikely. Most of the people we'll be speaking to are people who are not acupuncturists, who will have no idea what we're talking about. So we have to understand the human body from a Western perspective in order to interact and communicate with other practitioners when we refer people.
And it's helpful to speak a language that they would understand.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you want to speak to someone and have them understand you, hopefully using a language that makes sense to them, not ask them to come to make sense of our languaging of it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's why there's the common medical language. It's based on Latin and Greek and English. That's kind of become the universal language that everyone abides by. But the community of TCM practitioners, I think because on a whole, we don't want to let go of the story. We've got something that they don't have. I've seen people after I've done presentations on this and I've gotten to the end of it and explained in great detail that the nerves are the basis of everything. They go, I'll take that away and see how I can adapt that to the channels. Like, did you listen to anything I said? Like, because people want the story.
Well, it's hard to let go of any sense of understanding that we might have about something, especially when it's been hard won, like learning to think in a whole different way with different names and a physiology that looks different than Western physiology. Can be helpful too sometimes. I'm kind of back to thinking about the body with no names because there's two things going on in my brain right now. One is, could I see and approach the body without naming anything, without that story? At the same time, I'm completely with you that it's important to know what the structures and the names of those structures and the function of those structures are. Like, you need both of them. I'm curious to know when you lean on the no story part, where does that play a role in your work? How does that help inform what you're going to do?
The no story concept is applied in that you look at the consequence or the result of what happens when you put the acupuncture needle in and you just base it on that, which is pretty reliable. Like, yes, we're all different and all of our bodies are vastly different, even though we abide by the same anatomical framework. We all have a skeleton and hundreds of muscles and so on and so on. And we all behave differently individually, but the body itself behaves pretty similarly. Like, the neurotransmitters are all the same in each person. So it's safe to say that the body is going to respond exactly the same way most of the time from person to person when you put a needle in. So it's pretty reliable that you could use a standardized treatment to reduce inflammation because you're stimulating the vagus nerve for most people.
And of course, it's the body's response to the treatment that lets you know, was that helpful or not?
Absolutely. So, as I said, I haven't done TCM diagnosis I don't know how long, but I'm still getting great results. In fact, maybe better results because I know exactly what I'm trying to target with the nervous system. I know that with research that's been done, I know that electroacupuncture releases specific neurotransmitters and hormones at different frequencies. So all of mine is based on research. And I still haven't answered before the question you said about where the importance of where you put the acupuncture needles. So my theory, at least I haven't seen anyone else who's mentioned this, I believe that the action of the point is influenced by where it sits on the course of the nerve, specifically where a nerve bifurcates into two. And if you look at all of the main big hitting acupuncture points, you'll find that they all sit near a junction of where a nerve bifurcates from its common projection into the smaller ones. And then you follow that down, and you've probably seen Gunther von Hagen's presentation of the nervous system where it branches out like a tree, and it goes out to the fingers and it becomes a tiny little extensions of the nerves. And then you go back to TCM, and it's like the stream going into the river and then into the ocean. You go, aha, right. So they got a lot of things profoundly accurate, even though they didn't probably know so much that that's actually how it physically looked in the nervous system. They're going by feel and experience. But it's interesting that it works like that because your most intense sensation at your peripheries, and then it becomes kind of vague as it goes into the trunk of the body. So that's why distal points are so effective, because our hands and feet are where we interact with the world first. So they're going to have the most response from the central nervous system. And if you look at it's a model of the homunculus of where it shows which parts of the brain are most activated by the skin. I don't know if you've seen that. So like the hands are really big.
Oh, the hands are giant. Tongue is huge. Genitals huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the motor representation, so the part that sends out the signals, hands are still very big. The hands are the biggest part of the brain, take up a lot of real estate in the brain. So if we put needles in it, the brain is going to respond big time. So that's why distal points have such a big effect on the body. It's like the further away you do it, the bigger effect it has. And I believe that's the reason why colon 4, liver 3, stomach 36, they're all sitting at those junctions. And that's why they have such a big effect. There's a lot of activity there. Like for one thing to split into two, that's of big note to the brain because it's a change in what's happening.
You can really get the brain's attention with that. I'm thinking so often, think about how like America was settled. You'd find towns showing up often where two rivers would come together. You know, that's just kind of how civilization moves along. Yeah, because there's a lot of dynamic exchange in a place like that.
That's a good example of where things are repeated throughout existence. And it's not because aliens landed around the world and gave us the information to build the pyramids. It's that as humans, we think, what's the quickest way to get to the sky? Up. And what's the most logical way to build that? One step on top of the other. That's why we all build pyramids, right? So that's why we all think similarly, because we're humans and we have the same brain. So the concept of acupuncture, like you were saying, that building the towns on the rivers, like that's what happens in our body. Everything, and trees grow the same way. It's like everything branches out. Anyway, I was going to go onto a tangent of acupuncture being in like the meridians and everything like that, having a similar analog in India with the nadis, but that's for another time.
Wow. Well, you've given me a lot to think about here today. It's been quite a delightful look at how we're put together and how we can think about how acupuncture is working. And for some reason, it just brings kind of a smile to my face to hear you say, yeah, I've not used TCM in years and doing okay with my patients. It's, my suspicion is this is kind of how our medicine grows. We're given something, we're taught something, we try to make sense of it. Maybe we can make sense of it too and help people with it. And then sometimes there's things that just don't make sense, but it's like, I know this stuff works. Or I like the question that you bring up, like, what else is going on here? What else is going on here? So thank you for your time today and for your vastly inquisitive nature that gives you this perspective.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolute delight.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. Chinese medicine is deliciously and annoyingly circular. What came first, the qi or the nervous system? The function or the form? Where we put our attention is vitally important because where the attention goes, that's where you see deeper into what is there. Leah is not the first to consider the effect of acupuncture on the nervous system. Michael Corradino in episode 146, Pony Zhang in episode 121, and Jeremy Steiner way back in number 73, they all have investigated how the effects of acupuncture are mapped into the nervous system. What about you? How does your map of understanding include the nervous system, or not? How are you with having your ideas of how acupuncture works being challenged? And since we're asking uncomfortable questions, just what is the answer to the question of how does acupuncture work anyway? Do you have an answer that is short, concise, and would make sense to an everyday citizen of your community? If so, write it on a postcard and send it to me. I'm still working that one out. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.